Hi everyone and welcome to Guru Nick's 1 Minute of Wellness. Today's topic is exercise. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about exercise and maybe some of the misconceptions that are around it, and just give you or share with you some of my views that I like to implement in my exercise programs that I look after for my clients. So the first thing is, I'd like you to know that exercise is nothing but a form of stress on the body as well. So if you suffer from high levels of stress, whether it be mental, emotional stress or physical stress, it's important to understand that by adding a lot of exercise to the body, it can make things even worse for you, especially throughout your organ system. Now, it's important to understand that there's different forms of exercise. What we mostly hear of is forms of what's called working out exercise. In other words, forms of exercise that expend energy. So things like maybe doing a spin class or a step class, or things like a high energy workout, things like using weightlifting equipment, for high intensity levels of working out. These are all energy expending exercises. I think it's also important to understand that there's working in exercises as well. So working in exercises are exercise where we using a lot more energy building style exercise or energy building movements. So things like Tai Chi, things like Qigong, things like yoga, Pilates, soft forms of Kung Fu. These are all energy building exercise. So depending upon what your stress levels are, would depend upon what type of exercise that you select for your program. What I like to do with my programs is use what's called 4 to 6 key exercises and maybe 4 to 6 key stretches in there. Now with the stretches, I think the basic stretches are always usually the way to go. So maybe doing your low back, some forms of your back as well, low back, mid back, things like your chest, things like your hamstring, depending on if they're tight or not. Maybe things like your quad, things like your calves. These are all basic stretches. What I like to do with the exercise program is design it in a way where I'm doing what's called multi-movement exercises or multi-muscle movement. So I'm using more than one muscle group. So to give you an example, I might go with a squat and a row, depending on if I'm doing back, or maybe a squat and a push, or a lunge and a bicep curl. Means that I'm using the lower half of my body and the top half of my body as well together. I understand that for most people, time is really, really important. So there's no use spending 2 or 3 hours, doing a workout. Most of my programs are between 50 to 55 minutes, and that includes a warm up, the exercise, 4 to 6 key exercises, and then a stretch down or a cool down as well. Now, in sharing that, what I'd like to say is the way I like to program, depending on what's called your training history. So training history is how long you've been exercising for. And if you've had a training history of less than 6 to 12 months, I think it's important to, classify yourself maybe as a beginner in exercise itself. Now, in saying that, the repetitions that I like to use, depending on how detrained you are, so if you haven't trained for about 15 years and you're just getting back into it, which is a great thing, it's important to maybe do up to about 8 repetitions. Yeah. So in other words, I'm going to do the exercise about 8 times per set. Now I usually like to use 2 sets. So 2 sets in the beginning, and then I can always add more sets onto that. So now, a lot of people then that have done some exercise for around about the 6 months, I can usually start with about 12 or 15 repetitions. Now, a lot of people ask me, how heavy should I start with? And what I like to say is start about 60% of what you could lift, at a maximum rate. So to give you an example, if you could lift 100 kilos off the floor, maybe just use 60% of that, which is about 60 kilos. And this is what's called a 60% 1RM. Now, it's important to understand also that do complex movements first. So if there's something that involves a complex movement like a lunge with a bicep curl, or a squat with a pull, these are maybe complex movements that you haven't done before. It's also doing complex movements in the beginning ensures that the nervous system isn't getting too fatigued. Once the nervous system starts to get too fatigued, we start to make mistakes, and basically we go into what's called a bad technique, and it's a lot harder to recover after bad technique or after bad movements because of the fatigue of the nervous system. Now, in saying this, the one last thing that I'd like to share with you is it's important to, after a workout, you should actually be feeling a lot more energy through the body than before you actually started. A lot of people come to me and they said, "Look, I've been with other trainers, or I've been to the gym and I feel absolutely exhausted after a workout." What that means is that you haven't organized a program according to what really suits you. If you're too exhausted or too fatigued, it means that you've overdid it, or you've just taxed the nervous system way too much, or the energy systems in the body. So, some simple tips once again: just look at the differences between energy in and energy out exercises. Do 4 to 6 key stretches, 4 to 6 key exercises, and make sure that you feel a lot better after the workout itself. I hope this has been a really good 1 minute of wellness. Until next time, have a great day.